Hi guys, it's Mr. Y, and this is Mr. Y Reads. We're back with Phoenix again today. We're on chapter 34. So at the end of chapter 33, Major Dashwood died. He took the shot for Lucky to protect him, and Lucky felt a connection with him right there before Major Dashwood's death, and it said it didn't have time to say goodbye. It was quite a powerful moment. And where we last left it, he said, "For your mother's sake," urged the Major, "get out of here, Lucky. Go." So we're going to continue on with chapter 34 now, and see what happens to Lucky and Bixa. So chapter 34. They ran down the corridor away from the troopers. Excuse my cat. He's going to try and get up where the camera is now. No. There we go. Yeah, meow to you too. They ran down the corridor away from the troopers. Bixa led the way, a cannon in each hand, hair bristling with needles. Lucky was right behind her. Next came Frolics, carrying Mystica in one huge arm, leading the captain by the hand. And above all their heads flew Bazooka, flapping her wings in celebration of their escape. A massive explosion shook the corridors behind them. They heard Major Dashwood's war cry and the screams of AXA troopers. Then the explosion stopped. It grew ominously still behind them. "Major Dashwood," called Lucky over his shoulder. "Are you okay?" No answer came back. "Bixa, he knew what he was doing," said Bixa. "Keep going, don't stop." She was moving ahead already, scouting the way forward, round a corner and out of sight. Lucky waited for Frolics to catch up. Together they edged around the corner, then up some steps, making their way in silence towards the surface of the planet. But a detachment of troopers was waiting for them on the next level. They raised their cannon, fired, and a volley of shots hit the wall above Lucky's head, shattering the stone. Mystica and Nox cringed away from the shrapnel. They looked so frail and vulnerable. "Stay back!" cried Bixa. She ran full pelt at the troopers, flicked a crimson needle at them, and kaboosh! Everything in Lucky's head went weird. His senses scrambled, all mixed up. Sounds became shapes, colours had tastes, and the troopers were throwing up, sinking to their knees, clutching their heads and weeping. "Sensory dazzler?" asked Lucky, barely holding down the nausea. Bixa grinned. "You're catching on." "This," groaned Captain Noxa, "is why we don't like violence." "But we're getting there," said Bixa. "Just 2 more lefts and a right, then we'll be clear of this level." "Are you sure?" asked Lucky, running after her. "Can you really remember every turning we took on the way in?" "If you'd been watching instead of feeling sorry for yourself," she said, "then maybe you'd remember too." 2 lefts and a right later, a dead end loomed up ahead of them, a solid wall. A vidcam stared silently down at them from the ceiling. Said Bixa. "Did we pass this on our way in?" "I don't know," Lucky retorted. "I was too busy feeling sorry for myself." Cautiously, she approached the wall. "Frolics," she called. "Hang back behind the corner with Mystica and Nox till I tell you it's safe. Something about this I don't like." The vidcam whirred, and suddenly the wall began to move. It slid open before their startled eyes, and on the other side, dozens of AXA troopers were waiting. They had an entire armory of weapons, racks of cannon and ammunition, stacks of ground blasters and grenades, heaps of body armour and shields. Bixa fired both her guns at once, and her shots bounced right off their shields. The fire came straight back at her. "Duck!" she yelled. She and Lucky hit the floor together as fire singed their hair. Bixa tossed aside her cannon and sprang into action with astral martial arts instead. She leaped Leo style over a blast from the first trooper, then hit him with a cancer pincer movement. The trooper crumbled, dropping his blaster. Bixa caught it and took out more with her elbows as she went all Sagittarius, unleashing a hail of jabs and punches. But the others were onto her at once, surrounding her. And now, one of the troopers was in Lucky's face, shoving him back, aiming the muzzle of a cannon at him. Lucky shaped up to deliver a scorpio kick, and the trooper cracked him across the face with the barrel of his gun. Excruciating pain exploded in Lucky's mouth. There was a terrible crunching sound. It sounded like teeth breaking. He could taste something salty. He wondered if it was blood. He hit the ground, stars spinning before his eyes. The trooper cocked his cannon. "You leave him alone!" roared Bixa. She reared up like a lioness and let loose a ferocious blow that knocked the trooper sideways. But the walls were beginning to move again, swiveling, sliding, trapping them in the corner, and more troopers were coming through all the time. It was getting desperate now. Bixa fought on, but she was just one girl. Even with all her skills, she couldn't keep it up forever. She was pinned down in that corner, and there were more, always more, coming through all the time. Crack! One of the troopers broke through her defences. She reeled back. Whack! Bixa gasped. She glanced down at Lucky. He wasn't doing what he'd promised, and they both knew it. Bazooka the Phoenix swooped down at the trooper, claws extended, breathing fire, but the big man swatted her away like she was an insect and levelled his cannon at Bixa's head. "You're dead," he said. He grinned, pulled the safety catch, and "It is coming. It is rising. It is time." At the centre of Lucky's being, a spark of power flared into life. Impossible energies began to burn. His fingertips began to shine. And finally, the light poured out of him, the brightest light he'd ever seen, pouring from his hands, his head, his heart. The trooper gasped. He dropped his cannon, shielding his eyes. He backed away as the power rose and swelled and grew, blazing from Lucky like a star. A star. What else could it be? It'd been growing inside him, in his dreams and in his body, all this time. And now it was scorching out of him with unearthly light and heat and power. Stronger than the fires in a nuclear furnace. Brighter than the blast of 1 billion atom bombs. So bright and brilliant, it was like staring at the sun. At that moment, he knew the Star Talkers were right. There was no limit to his power. No limit at all to what he could do, if he just let it go. The other troopers saw it. They fell back, but they were disciplined crack troops. They regrouped, aimed their weapons at Lucky, and pulled all their triggers at once. A great hail of death came shooting towards him. He held up a hand, and the power of a star exploded out of him. Fire flashed from his fingers like a flaming sword. It caught their blasts and made them harmless. Not one of their shots got through. Lucky pulled himself up from the floor, flames crackling over his head like a halo, and sent a solar flare out at their armory. He was painfully aware that he was burning his own life away. The power was killing him, but he was determined not to kill anyone else with it. He was aiming to destroy their weapons, not the troopers, but their instruments of death. His solar flare hit, and the weapons rack went up in flames. The blasters blew up, the cannon melted, the ammunition exploded like a string of fireworks going off. Bixa's eyes widened. She watched from the corner, staring directly at the light that shone from Lucky's body. But she was not blinded by it. She looked inspired. She got up, needles flashing neon colours, and sprang forward again, a one-girl whirlwind of fighting force running out ahead of the fire. Lucky moved forward with her. Between them, they were unbeatable. The warrior girl with needles in her hair, and the boy with the star inside him. They fought side by side. It was like a furnace in the armory now, and the temperature was still rising. At the back of his throat, Lucky could taste something like sulphur, filling his senses with fire. But the power was so strong, so bright, it was irresistible, and it streamed out of him unstoppable. Not just his hands now, his whole body was aflame. "The Astraeus!" cried the troopers. "The old ones have returned!" And with that, they broke ranks at last and began to flee in terror. When it was done, when all those fearsome troopers had been put to flight and all their deadly weapons were smoke and ashes, Lucky and Bixa turned to each other. Bixa's eyes were alight. She looked on the scorching star that burned in Lucky's chest, and she was not afraid. She held out her hand and reached with her long, beautiful fingers, reached towards the blazing furnace in his heart. "Don't," he warned her. "Don't touch me. He'll kill you." But she reached, and just for a moment, and her silver eyes glowed ultra bright. "Don't fear it, Lucky," she said across the gap between them. "It's beautiful. We try so hard to be like the stars, but you actually are one." He watched her speechless, filled with feelings he didn't have names for. It was a moment when time seemed to stop, but it was just a moment. Then they heard voices calling from round the corner, and Bixa stepped away from Lucky unharmed. "Is it safe?" asked Frolics. "Yeah," said Bixa, looking up. "Yeah, it's safe." She grinned and ran her fingers through the neon needles in her hair. "Watch out, Theobroma!" she whooped. "We're coming for you!"
"Bazooki!"
exclaimed the Phoenix, picking herself up and leading the way forward again, flying towards freedom. They moved on, up and up, and up, rising through the levels with new hope, fresh determination. They burst out of Sharon Caves, out of bunker, through the gates, and back into the open air. It was freezing cold outside. On the surface of the planet, the blizzard was still raging. The air was full of ice, yet still the star blazed out of Lucky's body. And through the blizzard, through the whirling whiteness, they could see an entire army waiting for them by their encampment. Row after row of troopers, facing them with cannon and blasters at the ready. The Axa army, in all its power and glory, and beyond it, the Skyhawks of the Axa fleet. "King Theobroma!" Bixa yelled. "We need to talk to you!" "Put down your weapons," a harsh voice came back. "Put them down or we will destroy you." Was that the king's voice? Lucky looked out at the army. He couldn't see where the voice had come from. There were just too many of them. It was 1,000,000 against 2. He looked up at the sky. Even through the radiation storm, he could see that it was the bleached white as bones with the dying supernova light of Aquarius. "King Theobroma!" called Bixa again. "If you're here, then answer me. By all the stars, this is the most important thing there's ever been." No answer came back, except for the click of safety latches being unlatched and the rumble of weapons powering up. The Axa army weren't listening. The king wasn't coming. The plan wasn't going to work. Lucky felt bleak and angry. This was not the way he wanted it to end, burning his own life away just so he could take the lives of others. Surely this wasn't what he was supposed to do with his power. Surely it was meant for something more. Wind whipped into his face, yet his insides felt like superheated matter, raging against the blizzard. Red hot, white hot, hotter still. Some of the Axa troopers shielded their eyes as the solar wind swirled around him. Some of them dropped to their knees. But still the power rose inside him, higher and higher and higher again. His body was shaking. It felt like his head was splitting under the strain, breaking open as arcs of pain shot across his face, brighter and stronger than any human body could contain. He was holding his hands out ahead of him, trying with all his might to restrain the power that was bleeding out of him. The fire and the light and the burning in his brain. But it was bigger than him. It was like an endless nuclear meltdown. a chain reaction that could burn this whole world and more. And if he just let it go, he would explode, destroying himself and everything around him. Everything. There's no stopping it, he thought. It's going to blow. Enough, came a new voice rolling over the blizzard. Put your weapons down. No one hurts that boy. It was a rich, deep voice. Not loud, but totally commanding. The troopers lowered their weapons. Lucky looked up, trying to see who'd spoken. And then it came again. That voice. Boy, here I am. I am your king. I am Theobroma. That brings us to the end of chapter 34. Lucky and Bixa managed to fight their way through. Lucky's finally learned how to control that power properly and managed not to kill anyone this time, only destroying the weapons. And he finally met Theobroma. Will they be able to convince him to end the war and to stop the destruction of the universe? I guess we'll find out going forward. There'll be a new video tomorrow for chapter 35. I hope you've enjoyed it. Once again, it's been Mr. Y. It's been Mr. Y Reads. Thank you once again for watching. Stay safe.